Welcome to Board Gamers Anonymous, the podcast about board gamers and the insane fun we have at the table together. This is Chris.
Hey, and this is Anthony.
And this is episode 454, Great Games I Wish I Liked More. We'd like to thank all our Patreon backers for helping us bring you a brand new episode. Hey friends, we are back. We are back, way back now from PAX, although it's been a couple of days since PAX. And as we've enjoyed the convention, and as we've taken in the sights and sounds and the games at the tables and what everyone has said, and so many of you have come up to us, again, super appreciate, we've realized that, you know, there are some great games out there that we really do wish that we liked more.
Yeah, no, it's one of those funny things. Like, some of these I've even owned in the past because I'm like, I should like this, right? And you just don't, you know? And that's okay. It's okay for a game to be in the top 100 and all your friends to be in love with it, and for you to say, I'm good. I don't want to play that.
That's not what they say. They say, we're going to get some pitchforks and torches, and we'll be right back. You stay there. And I'm always, you know, I decide to leave just because, I don't know, reasons. But, yeah. You know, it seems like a thing. It seems like a thing for certain people out there, for sure.
I have certainly heard plenty of it over the years for not liking Agricola. That's not even on my list because I don't wish I liked that more. I'm happy I don't like it. So that's a little spoiler for y'all. Not on the list.
Yeah, well, the list that we're going to do for our feature review this week, of course, is the great games that we wish that we liked more. And I think in particular, the focus here is all about games that we kind of like, but since so many people love them, we wish that we had the same love for these games, because I think for me, and I'm pretty sure for you, Anthony, too, like, it would be amazing if we had a core group or a handful or even a single game that was like, this is my thing, this game, or these 2 or 3 games. Like, that would be great. And so many of these games are that for so many people, that this is the thing that they do. They have a meetup that's all about this. They have a weekly get together that's all about this game. They wear, you know, they wear merch based on this. They got tattoos based on this. I just want to be that guy. I just want to be that person that sincerely just has that thing that is just so big and so hot that you can just bask in the warmth of the glow and the feels that everyone has for it. And sadly, unfortunately, I do not.
Yeah, and honestly, that might just be because we do this podcast and we're not allowed to play a game 40 times. So,
although I have played a couple of these games 40 times, but yes.
Well, yeah, that's true. Yeah. It's different if you go to a game group and they keep pulling out the same game.
It's
You're like,
true.
Okay, fine, I'll play this stupid game again. But by choice, there aren't that many that have played that much.
Yeah, especially in this day and age where there's like not 10 great games coming out that year, but like 1,000 great games coming out. So yeah, that's why a lot of those games stuck up on the number 1 for so long, because they didn't have like major competition like they do now. So
sure,
I don't know. It sounds good. It sounds like a thing, to say the least. But yeah. And again, obviously, I think also because of the Kickstarters, that games are hot and people are in love and people have backed sometimes 2-3 years in advance. So all you hear about is this game that has not come out yet, but everyone loves it 2-3 years in advance. So you're like 2-3 years in advance of like hearing about this game.
Yeah, no, it's a funny thing because, and if you look at the numbers too, like back in the day, if a really hot game came out, they still only printed like 5,000 copies.
Sure.
At least in the first print run. If a game is really popular on Kickstarter, they print as many as they need to, right? Yeah. So if there's 20,000 backers, they'll probably print 40,000 copies.
Yeah.
Which is way more than ever existed before. So back in the day, you could get a hot game and be the person who has it and brings it to game night. Whereas now, the big hot game on Kickstarter, like, you and all your friends backed that. Like, which has happened to me many times. I'm like, why do we all own this game?
Yeah, the FOMO's real.
Yeah, and then you're like, well, now we have to play this. We have no choice but to play this because 4 out of the 5 of us bought it. So it's dictating what we play now based on our purchasing decisions from 2 years ago.
Yeah, I think early on in Kickstarter, they used to have a lot of those kind of package deals, like buy 6 copies of this. You know, you and your friends get together and buy 6 copies and you'll save on shipping. And that was a thing. And now every once in a while, I still see that where you could buy a package set. But also, as you mentioned, that makes no sense because you're playing games together. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Why would you do that?
Yeah, every now and then, like back in Pittsburgh, I would back something and then see a friend also back it because I'm following them. I'm like, what are we doing here? Why are we doing this?
One time I had a guy at a meetup group who's like, "Oh, I really like that game. What's the name?" He wrote the name down. He wrote the information down. I'm like, "Oh, why'd you do that?" He was like, "Well, if you leave the group or I leave the group, then I'll buy it." I'm like, "That's weird, but also I get it."
Yeah, no, that is the correct thing to do. I
Yes.
think it's not what anybody does because you're like, ooh, shiny, gimme, gimme.
Yeah.
Which is where most of my games came from.
Well, I think that's also because of the pandemic too, right? The
Yeah,
lockdowns, they weren't coming out with new games because obviously things weren't selling and things weren't playing, but everybody, again, not everybody, of course, but what the numbers show for the industry at that time was people were picking up the games that they loved but did not own.
yeah,
So, like, you own a copy of Terraforming Mars. I don't because I live across the street from you. We play every week. Now, pandemic, lockdown. Therefore, I should buy a copy now so I can play it with my family or,
hmm
local group. So, that was the big selling point of all those games over that period. So, but we'll talk about all those great games, and I think there'll be a lot of games that'll actually surprise you that we don't like more. So,
right.
don't get the pitchforks and torches, at least until we get to the feature review. Speaking of pitchforks and torches, Anthony, Lucky Duck Games has heard, supposedly heard, some of the outcry of their super overpriced upgraded edition of Food Chain Magnet and released a deluxe edition, which is weird because it's a lesser edition from the other edition, but it's
hmm
still a deluxe edition.
Yeah, yeah. The naming is strange, but hey, it's what people wanted, and it's kind of funny because it's a, still ridiculously expensive. Um, but now you can get it without, basically, without all of the
The miniatures.
ridiculous miniatures, right?
Yeah.
Which, regardless of whether you like that kind of stuff or not, it honestly looked like it would not have been a fun way to play the game. So,
Yeah, we were doing some physics calculations as far as like multiple people at the table, multiple miniatures on the board, and then trying to calculate the number of squares between restaurants and neighborhoods, which is really the vast majority of what goes on in the game. Like, do you have the stuff to sell? How many spaces away are you? What's your cost? And like you have to be able to see that on the board. So there was some value to having the pieces be so two-dimensional. Now that they're three-dimensional, it's a little harder to kind of calculate. So you would have to kind of stand up above the table, over the table to be able to do that.
yeah, which is all fine and good if the game wasn't 4 hours long. So, man, I just like when they first showed like the full renders with like, here's all the stuff you get. I'm like, oof, that looks difficult to process visually. So, yeah, so they made a flat version basically, which is all the upgraded artwork, all the like the fancy money, the paper money and stuff, but with cardboard instead of 3D
Yeah.
miniatures, and it's way the heck cheaper, like $130 cheaper.
Well, it's 299 euros for the collector's pledge, and then it's 179 euros for the deluxe edition pledge. So your mileage may vary. I don't know what the calculation is to the US dollars.
Yeah, it's
But
like 130 or so different. So
sure,
it's in line with what it would cost to buy the current edition from Splatter, which is still a lot of money, but it's at
it
least a
is.
reasonable amount of money. Like that's what you'd have to pay now, regardless.
Mhm.
So at least you're getting a fancier version if that's what you'd prefer.
Plus a little more money for the upgraded art and pieces.
Right. Yeah.
Which
So
again was my initial thought was they would charge they would calculate the final charge as the games at full price plus 50 some odd dollars for the miniatures, whatever it was. But they went they went they went far beyond that. So
yeah.
yeah, so with the deluxe edition, you get the base game, the expansion, you get restaurant tokens, which is nice. You get milestone trackers, you get upgraded artwork, you get organizers and trays. The map tiles are bigger. I don't think that's necessary. I think it's going to be a problem at your table, but nonetheless. And then you get new artwork that is, more colorful and poppy. And then you get, for some reason, full size color tokens with the heat transfers on it, which is nice. Again, not necessary, and so forth and so on. So it's better. it's cheaper. It's honestly what everybody wanted from the very start.
Yeah.
So that certainly is helping their numbers at the very least. And they're, by the time you hear this, you probably have 2 minutes to pack it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, your ability to back this depends on if I get this podcast up immediately tomorrow morning.
There you
So
go.
if you're not already, if you're listening to this now, you're probably too late.
And again, I think that's the shame of this whole campaign, because it was so far in advance, and I really dislike that GameFound does this, because I'm going to be putting out a new episode of Kicking the Habit for the Patreon backers, and I'm going through, the different crowdfunding sites, and GameFound, since they don't have a lot of product to show on their website to make it look like there's a lot of stuff, there's games on there that are like, they won't come out on GameFound for a year, 2 years. And I'm just like, why is this up here? Like, why are you teasing something that's not going to be shown? So this Food Chain Magnet was teased and planned and put out there for such a long time. It set bad expectations, or I'm sorry, let me just say it. It set reasonable expectations that was not fulfilled by the company.
Right.
And then when they released this deluxe edition, what, a week ago? 2 weeks
Yeah.
ago? It was,
Yeah.
they threw it together, I guess, to kind of appease and make some actual money off this. So if they would have done this at the beginning, I think they would have made a lot more money and made a lot more friends. And then, by all means, do the super deluxe edition. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. If you have the dollars for it, go crazy. I do think it's going to interfere with gameplay, but that's another story for another day.
Yeah. Well, if that's what you want, go for it. Like,
yeah, it's fine.
Like I had the same thing with Castles of Burgundy, but with Castles of Burgundy, at least that was an add-on.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't like, oh, you want Castles of Burgundy Special Edition? Okay, well, it comes with miniatures for every building in the game, $500 or whatever it ended up costing. Like, no, they started with the base level of the game, and you could add on in a normal way. This one, they obviously didn't plan for any of that, so they had to work in reverse, and it probably hurt them. There's no way to know for sure, but I don't know. I would have considered backing this if they just started with the deluxe edition, which again is what the version of the game costs. But it kind of soured on it at this point.
Yeah, I don't own the base game or the expansion. I played it. I like it. I think it's in my top 100 or top 150. It's around there. And this would have certainly been an opportunity to buy it. I like the original artwork. I'm not against it whatsoever. You and I talked about this recently, Anthony, about the expansion. I really like the expansion. I think the expansion does a lot of good for the game. And when I heard about this, I followed it. I had the marker on this. We talked about this on the podcast. I think with all that build up, like you said, if the deluxe edition was the released edition, I probably would have backed it. Just out of like, I like this game. I don't own this game. And there's so much hype for this game. Again, like we talked about with this special episode, it's a game I like. I wish I loved. This might have pushed me over the edge. And then, even insanely enough, if I backed the deluxe pledge and then there was like another $100 to buy the miniatures, I might have done it.
Yeah.
But when you release it as a whole and say it's my way or the highway like this, it's really hard. It's a lot to swallow. It's just a lot. And again, I think the gameplay elements might be challenged by these miniatures, and also I think this game is just bigger and longer and crunchier than most people think it is if they have not played it.
Yeah.
And I think that's I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens when this finally gets out.
Yeah, a lot of people are going to be disappointed. That's what's going to happen, but I don't know. We'll see. Sometimes it revitalizes a game to have something like this. Sometimes it just makes people mad. So we'll see which way it goes.
Yeah, I gotta believe that the initial conversation between Splatter and Lucky Duck was like brass Birmingham, and that's all they said. And they dropped the mic and they walked out of the room. And like Splatter must have been like, "Oh dear God, we could be the #1 game of all time."
Yeah.
If we just release a nice version of this, which Brass did. Brass had a lousy, ugly, terribly ugly version.
So ugly. Yeah.
And then they released this, which is gorgeous, beautiful, and it had the Iron Clay tokens with it. And like it changed board game history. And then I'm sure Splatter's looking for the same, mega thing. I think they just went too far.
Yeah.
Too close to the sun. I'm just saying.
Yep. I'm with you, man. It was too much. Too much.
Yeah. Well, speaking about too much and explosive, gigantic, amazing games, Anthony, every once in a while, because we are also big video game fans, we talk about video games.
We do, yeah, and it's a good time to do it because the Game Awards just happened yesterday,
Mhm.
which is a bit of a misnomer because if you actually watch the Game Awards, it's 3.5 hours of ads and about 30 minutes of awards, but it's still fun time to look back on the best games of the year.
Yeah.
And actual professionals do vote on the awards, so it is a
Mhm.
real thing. They just don't spend much time talking about it during the show. So,
Yeah, and as much as we do like the board game content, I love to watch the video game content, the playthroughs, the reviews, and just the innovations of games that have come out over the years. And they have done really well this year. I really felt we talked about this off mic. I think this is one of the best years of gaming in forever.
it is, yeah. It's a really weird year too, though, like because you hear about like there's been a ridiculous number of layoffs,
Hmm.
companies contracting. The company that owns Asmodee also happens to own like a dozen video game publishers, maybe more, and they made a bunch of very bad investments, and now they're laying a bunch of people off as a
Yeah,
result. So it's like bittersweet for sure, but at the same time, you have to appreciate the art that it's produced, and
yeah.
it's a lot of it's like hangover from COVID. Like these games are finally getting done.
Hmm.
So just so many good games came out this year. Like I play video games, I don't play that many, but this year I played a lot because there were so many that I was just that excited for.
But did you play the worst game of the year or the worst game of possibly of all time? The Gollum video game.
No, I did not.
It's the most maligned video game by everybody. Even the
Yeah.
publisher was like, "Oh, we're sorry. Like, we're sincerely sorry about this."
Yeah, no, having to release an apology, like a full written apology, like a week after the game comes out, probably the game's not good. Probably it's a sign.
The only thing worse was probably the ET video game for Atari back in the day
Yeah,
where they buried like 60,000 copies of it or something like
yeah,
the
well,
desert.
yeah, and that one like almost bankrupted Atari, so that's
Yes.
that's a whole nother level. But yeah, no, there's a lot of good stuff.
So why don't you take us through this, Anthony? Game of the year, which is the only one that really anyone cares about, but let's just talk about game of the year.
Yeah, so the game of the year, there was 6 nominees. I have played all but one of these. I've only beaten one, but I've played all but one. There was Alan Wake 2. So this was a much, much anticipated sequel to Alan Wake, which came out like 10 years ago, which I have been meaning to play forever, and I will play this winter now, I think, because it's about a writer and them kind of living vicariously through what they're writing.
Mhm.
So it's like very much in my wheelhouse, but it's also like survival horror, which is not in my wheelhouse. So like we'll see. I'm gonna make it happen because I really want to play it. And I played Control a few years ago, which is like a quasi sequel to that, and I really like that game. So
Mhm.
Alan Wake 2 is a sequel to both of those games, and it won a bunch of awards. It did not win Game of the Year, but it won Best Game Direction, and Best Narrative. So it's worth checking out. I'm going to be checking it out.
Yeah, a lot of different stuff. How about some Marvel Spider-Man 2?
Spider-Man 2, yeah, I played through Spider-Man, the first one, came out 5 years ago, and I played through Miles Morales, which came out 3 years ago. Um, I started this one and maybe like a quarter of the way through it. It's very, very good.
Mhm.
If you like Marvel stuff, you like Spider-Man, it is a very good video game. Um, you have to have a PS5 though. That is a limit. So you go. It's if you don't have a PS5, it's a $600 video game. So you
Oof.
gotta deal with that.
All right, what about Resident Evil 4?
Yeah, so they did the remake
Yeah.
of Resident Evil 4. And if you're not familiar, Resident Evil 4 came out over 20 years ago on the
Yes.
GameCube. Um, but they remade it with all new graphics, and it is a very good, faithful, in many ways, not always, adaptation of that original game. I've been playing it in little bits here and there because it is scary, and I don't like scary things most of the time, but occasionally I'm up for it.
Sure.
It's such a good game, though.
All right, and then Super Mario Bros. Wonder.
Yeah, so they finally went back and made a good 2D Mario game.
I was shocked by this.
Yeah, the last like 3 or 4 2D Mario games, not great.
Mhm.
It's been a long time since they made a good one, and this one is legit very good. I've beaten it a couple times now, once by myself and once with the kids. Very, very creative. You get to be an elephant. It's fun.
I know. It's great. The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom.
Ah, yes. This is my game of the year. I like the game that won a lot, but I haven't gotten far enough in it to say it's, you know, that amazing. I mean, it is, but Legend of Zelda is my thing. And it has been since I think I was like 13 when I discovered Ocarina of Time, and Breath of the Wild was like, this is amazing. It's my favorite game of all time, and this is better than that. So it's just I played this nonstop for like 3 months after it came out.
Mm,
Um, I don't play anything that much, and I have like 100 hours in this game.
wow.
It's so good.
And then finally, our winner for Game of the Year, not ours personally, but other people's fancy winners, Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah, Dungeons and Dragons, the video game, like legit.
Who thought?
So
Who'd have thunk it? We did, but nonetheless.
yeah, it's about to say if you'd asked us, nobody
Yeah.
would have believed us. We're like I don't know, D&D is pretty hot right now with all the Let's Plays and everything else, and it was like I don't know, man, it's a CRPG. No one's liked those in like 20 years. Do you remember the like the halcyon days of CRPGs like
Oh, yeah.
Baldur's Gate and Neverwinter Nights, and it's been a while.
It has. And again, I think that's what's most impressive about the games that came out this year, like in the Mario Brothers one, like, and even Alan Wake 2. Like I remember the original
Yeah,
way back when, and that was kind of innovative in its own way too. And that they just went back and they went for it because you did not need to do that. No one was asking for Baldur's Gate 3.
right.
Nobody was asking for Alan Wake 2. Like those are just not things that are happening anymore, right? Like,
Yeah, and that's the crazy thing. Like all six of these nominees were sequels or remakes,
yes.
and they all knocked it out of the park.
Crazy, because they could have
Like,
just done a passable job and been fine. Like, it just, people would have bought them anyway.
oh yeah, yeah. So like again, like Super Mario Brothers, the new Super Mario Brothers series, which I think there's like 4 or 5 of those.
Mhm.
They're mediocre. They're fine. Like they're sevens, right? But like you don't want Mario to be a 7. Mario is supposed to be a 10 out of 10 game. And it's been a while since we got a 2D Mario that was a 10 out of 10, and we finally got one. So it's just, yeah, everybody went for it this year, and they made it happen. It's crazy.
Yeah, and again, there's so many other I mean, the reason why this also is very good is because there was so many other games that came out this year as well that were also very good and thought that they would like throughout this whole year, it was like, "Oh, the new Diablo, like that's going to win game of the year." And like
Yeah,
not so much.
yeah.
Like,
It
you
wasn't
know.
nominated for anything, and it's great. It's a
Yeah.
great Diablo game, but it's just in this year, like no. There's a
That's
new
what
Final Fantasy game this year that was also very good, and it was
yeah.
nominated for like 2 things.
It's just it's really surprising. And again, that's great cuz usually when you win an award and you have like you were the only good thing, like that's fine. Like no one's going to be
Yeah,
mad at you about it. But like the fact that there was so many great games that came out this year and the list was so long that actual good stuff that would normally win game of the year wasn't even included, that says a lot. Like
yeah,
that's pretty amazing. You know, good Star Wars stuff, good cyberpunk stuff, just a lot of great stuff here.
yeah, yeah. I'm like I said, this is probably the most video games I've played in a year in a long, long time, possibly since my kids were born. Like, and I used to play a lot of video games before my kids were born, but then
Kids.
kids, it's hard to play games.
There you go.
Um, but this year I was like, I'm gonna find time because these are just like legit all timers, and it's been a good year.
True, true, true. All right. Well, that's what's going on in the gaming world out there. Anthony, there's a lot of stuff that's going on with our friends out there. What's our question of the week?
All right, question of the week this week is: what's a game that completely upended your expectations for good or bad,
Oh,
and how so? So, like a game that you went in with certain expectations, and you're like, "Oh, this is not what I thought it would be." Kind of thematic for our episode this week. So, over on the Patreon, and again, when we ask a question of the week, you can answer it on Patreon or in the Discord and be entered into a contest to win a game from our collection of prizes. So, David on the Discord this week says, "For me, it's Root. It was the first truly asymmetric game I'd played, yet it still maintained competitive balance. As such, it changed many of my expectations for symmetry in game design." Yeah, that's for me too. I think Root is up there because other asymmetrical games I played before that were like coin games or vast games that gave me headaches. Right.
yeah.
So,
Vast was came out before this
yep.
for leader games, and I really liked Vast a lot, but it was very hard to teach because you really had to know everyone's faction, and it was kind of problematic to play in some ways.
Yeah. It was really
So
hard. Yeah.
But there was so much love for it, and then they were like, "Oh, we're gonna do Root," and you're like, "Come on, man! Like you've already like don't do this to yourself."
Yeah.
But they did, and it worked out.
Yeah, no, it worked. It's an all timer. Um, Drew throws out another one that actually I would probably cite for this as well. PAX Pamir, and
Yes.
I'm assuming they're talking about second edition. I went in thinking this was a dry area control war game. My mind was upended upon discovering that one, you aren't really playing a side, but rather trying to be the most favorite of the winning side. And two, conflict points and actions are through developing your card tableau.
Yeah.
So, such a unique system and a unique game. I had the exact same response. Like, I didn't back this. I wasn't interested in it. A friend
Yeah.
brought it over. We played and was like, oh my gosh, this is brilliant.
I literally had a conversation at PAX with somebody. I think it was Will, maybe. It was either Will or Eddie, and I was just like pointing towards like PAX Premiere Second Edition was at one of the booths, and I'm like, this
Yeah.
game. I'm like, no way this game should work or be appealing or interesting or dynamic, and like it is. Like I don't.
Yeah.
It's just I don't know how that happened.
Yeah. I know. It's so good. Oh man, that's two in a row though. They're both Cole Worley games, which is funny. And I'm pretty sure somebody mentioned John Company over on the Facebook. So
Oh sure.
I guess Cole Worley has a way of upending people's expectations. Ryan, our third entry here on Patreon says Oranienburger Canal by Uwe Rosenberg. So Ryan says, I'm not the biggest Uwe fan, finding them generally just okay. So I'm not sure why I backed the GameFound campaign a few years back, and I expected to sell it shortly after receiving it. But when it arrived earlier this year, I absolutely have fallen in love with the game, and it's become one of my top games in general. It's like a pure Uwe Euro game distilled down to its cleanest bits. It has a simple set of actions, but has deep decision making, including building routes and buildings. Swapping out the different building decks adds a ton of replayability. It's fantastic, and the one Uwe game I own.
Whoa.
Right. High praise for Oranienburger.
Yeah.
So that's over on our Patreon. A couple other answers on the Facebook page. George Cook mentions Love Letter. I heard nothing but good things about it, but never found it interesting sounding at all. Gave it a try, and now it's one of my favorites. Turns out everyone was right. So there you go. Also mentioned Spectre Ops. Loved the company, the designer, the art, the concept, everything except the gameplay. Just could not find a moment of fun in it. Always bummed out about that one. Mark mentions Victorian Masterminds. So
Oh no.
no, it goes the other way than
Okay.
what you'd expect. At the time, I was still fairly new to gaming, and the cover just did not appeal to me. But I really enjoyed the gameplay and would love to play it again. So
There you go.
there you go. Mark likes Victorian Mastermind. You know,
That's
the thing about that game is it's actually interesting until you kind of solve it, and then you're like, oh, there it is.
gotcha.
Um, and then Michael mentions Holotype, first design from the creators, and it's pretty solid. Not fantastic, but thematic and well thought out. So a few different games that people were kind of surprised by, thrown by, something interesting popped up. Um, I I feel like for me though, and it's probably I think sounded like for you as well, that the answer here is PAX Pamir.
Yeah, I think absolutely.
Yeah. So congrats, Drew. I'll reach out, choose a game from the list. But that is the answer. And if like I had to pick one, I'm like, yeah, that's probably the one for me too. It's not what I expected in any way, and all the things it does, I'm like, yep, that's great. I want to see more of that.
Yeah, certainly judge a book by its cover kind of thing. I
Mm-hmm.
think this is the most extreme example of it. Like, you can look at the box, you can look at the game components, you can look at the artwork, you could read the history and what it's trying to do, and you can look at the designer, and then at no time do you think this works. Like, oh, that was a first edition. Nobody liked that. Just like, all right, like, but if you were forced to sit down and play it, you're like, oh, that is surprisingly good and surprisingly dynamic and really interesting story. Like, who knew? I like this game that I never in all the years of life and would ever think I would. Yeah, yeah, it's a
Right.
thing. You're just like you're befuddled. I think the word is befuddled. I'm gonna go with befuddled. Does that seem right?
That is a very good way to put it.
Yeah,
Yeah, and like it's not just like the game too, because when you're playing it, the scores are like the first time I played it, I got 2 points, right? And you're like, what is this? But then the next time I played it, one of the players got 0. So it's just that's not the
sure,
point of the game. It's yeah, it just really makes you rethink everything about that type of game, which is great.
absolutely. All right. Now on to our games that we'd like to get to the table and not be befuddled about because we've seen them in advance. And we want to tell you in advance so that you might, back them in advance or pick them up or play them. I don't know. Our acquisition disorders this week, Anthony. What do you have for us?
All right. So I'm kind of stealing one from you because you sent this to me, but you didn't put it on the spreadsheet, so I feel okay saying it.
Aw.
Uh, I, I checked the spreadsheet first, and you had something else, so
Yeah.
I'm doing Nucleum Australia.
There you go.
We just played Nucleum at PAX. I have a copy. I'm looking forward to playing it solo here in the next few days.
Listen to this guy brag. Do you hear this,
Yeah,
folks?
no.
He's played it. He's got a copy of it. He's got a tattoo of it. He named his kid after it.
Yeah, drag the kids down to the courthouse. Like, I got to change his name to Nucleum.
Well, I mean, look, all the cool kids are doing it. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. It's good stuff. He needs a bright glowing green tattoo on his arm, please.
Well, look, your other kid's named Spirium, so I'm not really surprised.
That's
at
true.
all.
Yeah, I just really like glowing green stuff.
That's right.
So this is a new map in Australia, right? To put it simply, it's an expansion coming out next year. So, could be in a month, could be in 12 months. Who knows? Probably, I would imagine it'll come out towards the fall. That's when these things tend to come out. But it's taking it into a new region. So the big change here seems to be shipping lanes. So you have the opportunity to kind of travel over water. There's islands there as well, like off of the main island of Australia. And just a generally different layout. So the expansion comes with the Australia map. It also comes with new setup cards, coal mine tiles, new contract tiles, new milestones, new actions, and boats. So the new mechanic here mostly seems to be boats. And then you have a new map. And I'm 100% okay with that because I love games that have a solid system in place and they can just be like, here's a new map, here's a new map, here's a new map. The thing I don't like is that I always feel the need to buy all the maps.
Sure.
So we'll see how that goes. Like, I have like 7 Concordia maps. I play Concordia like twice a year. Why do I have 7 Concordia maps? I don't know.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Power Grid, same thing. I have like 3 boxes full of maps. Some of them are still sealed. But Nucleum, it's going to be the same problem, and it's even a longer game. But I'm probably going to pick this up because it's a new way to play, and it doesn't seem to add any bulk to the rules, which I think is the main thing, like you and I talked about.
Yeah.
Great, expand it, but remix, don't add.
Mm-hmm.
If you add things to this, I'm not interested because the game already has probably about as much as I want to deal with.
I think, and again, we'll see how stringent, or I don't know, like Australia, right? Like, are they?
Yeah.
Is it actually going to look like Australia, or is it just going to be another blob of land?
It's a blob of land. I'm looking at it now. It's
Gotcha.
a big blob of land. But
all right, so they're calling it Australia because just they had to pick a spot, I guess.
Well, you got shipping, so
right,
there's the island element of it.
Right.
There's coal mines.
Sure.
There's more uranium access, which is true to Australia. I don't know. A lot of these maps are probably going to be kind of silly, and obviously the location names are going to be Australian.
I mean, I'm fine for that. I'm down with that. Like, Australia's great, love it, all down for it. Definitely, we need more of that. I do think that the first board was a little graphically cluttered, and I think when we did our playthrough, I think even the teacher, the PAX teacher there, was like, this section over here doesn't look important because it doesn't. It's like way off to the bottom side of the board, but it is really important. You score a lot of points down here. So, like, I think boards should kind of lend themselves to kind of show you thematically what's important as far as what you should be doing, like regions and areas that are rich in certain things. And I don't think the board was bad for Nucleum, just it could have been more informative, at least the layout.
I just sent you the link to this. It is just as nonsensical, I think. If anything, it's actually a little more. It's because it's more crowded. Like, this does not solve the problem that you're describing at all.
It's brighter. I'll give it that. It's brighter.
That is true. Yeah, the Germany map was kind of dark.
Yeah.
But it's like, just looking at it though, I'm like, there's multiple connections in and out of every location, which is good from a gameplay perspective, but it is still kind of busy to look at.
Yeah, I wish it actually looked like Australia. I'm just
yes, that would be nice, because even if this is Australia, it's like a corner of Australia. Like, it's Melbourne up to the Gold Coast. It's not the whole continent. can't be. So I
No,
think it's a bit of a mess.
no. I mean, it's a big continent at least.
Sure.
It looks brighter. It looks a little more traditional, which I'm not necessarily super on board for. But I think the blue, I think the ocean kind of brings it a little clearer.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm excited about this. I wonder if this. I wonder why about this expansion, because the base game just came out. Like, was it something that was like, we've talked about this for like a decade now? Like, was it something that was like created and then just cut off? Like they, like some, certain of the ticket to rides, you get two maps. Was
hmm
this something, or was just like, is this a response to the game? Like the playtesters were like, if it had these things, it would be better. I don't know,
I'm
but
gonna guess because they have everything mocked up already that this was like designed with the rest of the game.
yeah,
Like,
everything looks completely ready to go. So, like you
yeah,
said, we'll probably see this around Gen Con Essen time. So
yeah,
just because that's when things sell. I would love for this to come out in January. That would be great, but
yeah.
that's not what games do. They don't do
No,
those
no, no.
things.
No, it'd be weird too because not everybody even has a copy of the game yet. So it's just now getting into distribution.
Yeah.
Um,
Which is weird. That's why when I sent you the information on the expansion, I was like, this is soon. This is very
yeah,
soon.
yeah. They're very confident in the game, and they should be. It's a good game, but at the same time, it's like we're gonna get a lot of expansions for this, aren't we? Because that's quick.
Yeah. I again, like we talked about how Fuche Magnet like didn't need all the giant crazy kind of pieces, and this doesn't have giant crazy pieces. I would have actually liked to seen a cool Nucleum piece, like the plastic
Mm.
green cube and the little power plant thing. I think that could have been like punched up a little bit, but maybe that's another expansion down the road.
You know what? If it's popular enough, someone will do it.
Oh, I know Etsy's already all over this. So check
Yeah,
out Etsy. Etsy's awesome. Those are independent designers and crafters and creators like, you know, holiday stuff. Go to Etsy. Go to independent people. They're awesome.
yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, Anthony, that seems good, but I doubled down on you just in case because I knew you were going to do this. So I wanted to talk about just two quick Kickstarters that you either are on board for or just didn't know about, or, you know, wanted to be that person that owned everything. And I know we're out there because I do a podcast. So I want to tell you about Star Realms Deluxe Colonial Collection. It's a beautiful portable all foil Star Realms collection. I played Star Realms, Anthony. You've played Star Realms. I'm sure everyone
Yep.
listening has played Star Realms at some point. Two-player, battling game about all these different intergalactic planetary ships and defenses, and it has an amazing free app that you can play, at least the base game, so to speak. And then it had all of these expansions and other stuff, and then I lost track of it because it was just way too much, and I couldn't keep up with it. But it's a great game, and it's been used. The mechanics has been used in so many other games, like I guess the recent Star Wars deck building game previously
hmm
used it, and Hardback. I think Hardback had a Star Realms, if I remember correctly, element to it, where you were basically like when you had letters out, they were like bases, like you had this
Yep.
letter you can always count on. So
Right.
if you ever were interested in this, or don't know anything about it, this would probably be the time to back it. So, uh,
Sure.
and it has multiple levels, but again, you pretty much are going to want to buy everything. There's the foil cards. Foil cards are always nice, and then there's foil cards with sleeves, and then there's the super deluxe box that's beautiful and has everything. And the box itself unfolds to be a game board, which is
Ooh,
awesome. I love that
I
they
love
did that.
that.
Yeah. I can't believe, so many times you back a game, especially when it's on Kickstarter, and they're like, oh, we have this great game board or game mat. And you're like, oh, that's amazing. I want that. And then you're like, how am I going to travel with this? I'm always going to forget it. It's always going to be extra. It's always going to be like stuck somewhere else. But the box itself turns into that two-player thing. So this is the time, especially, and I really appreciate the fact that you can back this game with with the appropriate sleeves. So if this game is going to get in the hands of a lot of players over a lot of times, yeah, this is a thing to do. So yeah, Star Realms.
This is cool.
Yeah,
Yeah. The only thing that ever makes me wary is board games, especially with foil cards. The cards tend to curl.
yeah,
So it'd be nice to know. And I know they've done foils in the past, but it would be nice to know from a listener or something like, they got good quality foils, or they get curly? Because you can't play a game like this if they're curly.
Yeah, I wouldn't buy this without the sleeves.
Yeah,
I don't think I foils are always, like you said, very problematic at the very least.
yeah,
And if they're on thin paper, and I think I remember Still Realms not having the thickest card stock. Pretty sure about that.
yeah. I mean, the original base game was like $15, so yeah,
Yeah.
it wasn't super high quality. This is 190, so I hope it's higher quality.
Yeah. So it's out there. So check it out. Also, another very similar game in the same kind of, I mean, just tremendously similar. Adventure Time card game. I'm sorry, Adventure Time Card Wars 10th anniversary. For the glory, celebrate the anniversary of the most epic card game in the land of Ooh with the ultimate collection and new content. So, once again, maybe you love Adventure Time and did not know that they have a 2-player battle game, just like we talked about with Star Realms. I mean, you watch the show, so you know that they actually had an episode about it, which is really fun and cool. I love that episode where they battle. Do you remember that, Anthony? Are you an Adventure Time fan? Should I ask?
I wish I was. No, it's
Get
I
off this
know.
podcast, bro. What
I
the
know
heck?
enough through osmosis. I know there's a new thing that's all gender swapped and people are digging that, but I don't know. I'm
I don't know how you of all people have not watched this. It's like if someone's playing Legend of Zelda on, like, I don't know, some sort of illegal drug. I mean, but it has some, but it,
You know what the problem is though?
yeah.
This show is on when Jack was a baby.
Uh-huh.
So like anything that happened in that period of time from like 2011 through 2015, I have immunity.
All right.
Just saying.
Fine. Fine. So, priorities, man. That's all I'm saying. You have a kid, but there's a great show on TV. I mean, priorities. So
No.
I will say that this, like I said, it's Legend of Zelda. I mean, it's not Legend of Zelda. It's elements of that kind of medieval D&D questing with weird creatures and characters, and it presents itself as more of a kid show. So you do have to catch a couple of episodes until you're like, oh no, this is actually really meant specifically for adults. And then there are several episodes and several arcs that are really mature, not in a sexual kind of way, but like very mature theme and writing and surprising. And again, if you like those adventure games like Baldur's Gate or anything else like that, I think you really will gel with this because the stories are great. The stories and the elements great. And then the recent stuff is also very good. Like it's also great as well. It's not lesser than, it's just different. It's more along the lines of the multiverse. But this stuff is very good. So they do have a battling 2-player card game. And again, it has different factions with different card sets that are representative of the old stuff and the brand new stuff. So if you like Adventure Time and you did not know, this would be the time to pick it up because you could pick up all the stuff all at once at a very good price and you're done. It's good. If you're not an Adventure Time fan, it's just another, 2-player kind of game out there. So I don't know, maybe Magic or maybe this. I don't know. It's out there. Again, you could pick up all the really good stuff at a reasonably price. It's on Kickstarter. You got some time to back it. It's from Cryptozoic. And Cryptozoic knows how to do those 2-player battling games. They got the Cerebus engine, so they did all the DC deck building ones and the Lord of the Rings and several other ones like Naruto, and I don't know. There's a lot of them. Transformers. There was so many of them back in the
Yeah.
day.
It's endless.
So they did another one. But it's Adventure Time now, so that's fine. Yeah. So check it out. All right.
Yep.
All right, so that's everything that we want to hit the table this week. Let's talk about the games that did hit the table, and we'll let everyone know if those games are a buy and they should run out and pick those games up. If those games are a play and they should sit down and enjoy them. If those games are a dodge and they should avoid them. Or in fact, if those games are the dreaded burn and just let it roast over an open fire with some chestnuts and Christmas carols because, it's the holidays, man.
It's always so interesting and creative, like how we're burning the games, but then we don't burn any games. So we gotta find some bad games, man.
Do we? I burned a game. I burned a game this year, at least one.
Yeah, I was close. I don't think I quite got there, but
Hmm.
I don't burn a lot of games.
Feel
That's
the
what people keep telling me, like, Anthony, burn more games. I'm like, I don't like playing bad games.
Dude, you got a job. Part of the job is playing bad games. That's what people are asking us to do.
Mm.
Some Schadenfreude going on here. They're like, Chris and Anthony, could you play the bad games for us? I'm like, oh man. They're like,
All right.
yeah. So we do
Yeah,
it for
y'all
them.
need to send me some recommendations of bad games
Oh
so you can get some
no,
fun bad reviews.
that's gonna be
I'm like,
that's gonna be a whole podcast now. Look what you did.
yeah, probably. I would actually have fun with that if people are like, play this, it's terrible. I'm like, cool, and you go in thinking like, how bad could it be, and then take it from there.
I think that's a New Year's resolution right there. Play more bad games.
Yeah, there we go. We did it. Oh man. Well, unfortunately, my review this week is not a bad game. It's
Oh, come on, man.
Yeah, it's not the second coming of board games either. It's fine, but it's not bad. It's Junk Drawer, and this is a polyomino placement game. So I don't think it's a bad game. I don't know what you would think, but it is a game in which you are organizing a messy junk drawer and scoring points based on some scoring recommendations. I didn't actually know this existed until I got an email from my game store back in Pittsburgh, and the owner of who writes those emails was all about it. Like, this game's amazing. And I was like, oh, interesting. Polyominoes. And then I demoed it at PAX with my daughter, who likes patchwork. And I'm like, okay, this is polyominoes. You like polyominoes? Let's see how it goes. And she's like, this is cute. I like this. So I ordered a copy. Um, in the game, you have a grid of 4 scoring tiles that are telling you what you need to do in your own junk drawer, which also has 4 sections. And these things are fairly basic. They're things like, spaces covered on the outside, spaces covered on the inside, spaces not covered on the inside, so on and so forth. You get to the more advanced cards because there are more advanced scoring cards, and they could be like specific shapes that you're trying to build.
Sure.
And what you do on your turn, everybody's going to have a card. There's 4 cards for each round, and you flip them over one at a time, and everybody has to look into their personal supply of tiles and take that tile, because you all have the same tiles, and you place that tile into one of the 4 locations. You get to choose. You're all placed in the same tile, but you get to choose where it goes. So it's kind of like Karuba, or honestly like a roll and write or a flip and write. And then you're trying to do that in the most efficient way possible to meet the objectives of the game. And so you do that 4 times. All 4 of those tiles need to go in a different section. So you have 4 sections. You cannot place 2 tiles in the same section on any given round. And the game just keeps going until any one player can't place a piece. Like, there's just not enough space for it. And then you finish that round and the game is over. So the game ends at different levels, because if you have one really inefficient player, the game ends pretty early. Versus if you have, a few very efficient players, the game might go a little bit longer. It can't go that long just because you don't have that much space for stuff. The solo version is literally just that, but you're doing it by yourself. So I've done that as well. And then you look at your score based on the number of points that you can gain from each of those scoring tiles. Whoever has a high score wins. Very simple. The game takes I think they say up to 25 minutes, but I can't imagine it taking that long. So 15, maybe. It's very quick. And it's perfect weight for a family, because the rules themselves, like, you read the rule book, it's like 2 paragraphs. Like, everything else in that rule book is just like examples, and they have like recommendations on combinations of scoring cards based on, like, do you want something easy, medium, are you playing with older people, which is nice to have from the family perspective. It is pure polyomino puzzle organization. There's not much strategy beyond that. It's very tactical, but I found it to be cute and interesting. I like games that have, like, everybody has the same resources. Let's see who can do it the most efficiently. Like, again, I like roll and writes. I like that type of game. So this is like a flip and write combined with a polyomino game, which there's the only other one I can think of is number 9, which is the same kind of thing. You flip a card, everybody takes the same number, and you stack it in your tableau. So this is up there with number 9, which is a solid play for me. I own that game. And I think this one is also pretty solid. So I'll hold on to it. It's a play. I think the kids will continue to enjoy it. And it's just really quick and simple. Like, this is something I could throw on the table and we could play in 15, 20 minutes as filler, and gives you just a little bit of a scratch in terms of, like, thinking and puzzliness without it being, like, overwhelming if you only have a few minutes to play. So all the parents out there know what I'm talking about. Like, you want something a little more substantial than a dice chucker, but not 2 hours long. And this kind of fits that niche really well. So Junk Drawer, solid game.
I appreciate the fact that, unlike Feast for Odin, the shapes of the polyominoes do match the shapes of the items themselves.
That's true. Yes, they do. Yeah, a roll of tape is shaped like a roll of tape. There's like an asthma inhaler.
Yeah.
There's like a
Corkscrew.
flashlight
Yeah.
corkscrew. Yeah, like it's cute. It's a cute game, and it the kind of puzzly nature of it is interesting. So it's
No,
the theme works.
I think it's great, and I think it's good for a lot of people who are not into organization to see, like, yeah, organization can be a puzzle. Organization can be fun, especially for younger people who are like, look, we all have a junk drawer, but draws, they need to be organized. So, like, yeah, this I think this works really well. I appreciate this a lot. And I think always think it's funny too, because so many times people come up and they're like, "Oh, you do the board game thing." And they're like, "Yeah." And they're like, "What types of board games? What are the themes and stuff?" I'm like, "Literally anything." And they're like, "No, no,
Yeah,
no. There's not a board game based on this." And I'm like, "Oh
yeah,
no, there's like several based on that." And they're like, "What about this?" I'm like, "No, no, there's 12 based on that." And yeah, now there's a game, if there wasn't already, a game based on organizing your junk drawer.
yep. And it is literally that you are organizing a junk drawer, like physically, which
Yeah.
I love.
Which
I love when a game can take on the manifestation of the thing you are physically doing, and this is exactly
no,
that.
I mean thematic appeal. Like I love a game that has the theme and like it just looking at the game itself. I haven't played it, but looking at the game itself, like I get it. Like I get it completely. It makes perfect sense all along the way. So yeah,
Yep,
bravo there.
yep. I could teach this game to you in like 30
There
seconds.
you go.
Like that's how simple it is.
Excellent. All right, so that's everything that hit our table this week. Let's get on to our feature review. So our feature review this week, of course, is the greatest games in the world that we wish that we liked a lot more because people love them. We want to love them. We feel like there's a reason to love them, but unfortunately, sadly, we don't love them. We like them, but we don't love them. But we want to like
Yes.
them, but we want to love them? I don't know. We like them. It's
That's a good way to put it. Yes,
it's
that's
a
exactly how it
it's
is.
a roller coaster of emotion, people. These games are just toying with us, which is also kind of a pun, not intended. But nonetheless, Anthony, you've had these experiences, you've played these games. Why they're on your shelf right now, you're looking at them, they're looking at you. There's
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep. The first one on my list is literally sitting in the hallway right now because I need to take it downstairs.
Uh-oh,
So
shh, be quiet, it's gonna hear you.
it is, yeah, and it could beat me up. It's pretty big. So yeah, no, it's interesting. Like some of these games are like a couple of these games were in my top 100 or 150 for a while, and it's like it made a strong first impression, maybe, or like I got caught up in the hype and the buzz of it, and I held on to it out of I don't know guilt or obligation or thinking maybe I'll still like this if I get it in the right circumstances or if I can get it set up right, and it just never happens, right? Like there's a couple of games on this list where I don't own them, or I feel like I played them a few times and I'm like, it's just not going to happen. But some of these, I'm like, I've owned these for a while and I really want to like it, and it's just not working.
Yeah.
Um, and that's okay. I think this is our therapy for the week. Is like it's okay not to like a game that everybody else likes.
Yeah, I mean, like we talked about PAX Premiere Second Edition, where everything tells you this game will not be fun. And
Yeah,
then you play it, you're like, oh, I don't know why. And again, once you play the game, you're like, I still don't know why it's fun. Like I was literally
yeah,
like I said, I was pointing out to someone at the con, and I'm like pointing at the game, and they must have thought I was a crazy person. I'm like, this game is fun. Pointing at the game, fun game, and they're like, why? Are you okay? Do you need an adult? Do you need to sit down? Are you dehydrated? And I'm like, because you have to like penetrate everything that it feels like it's not. These games, to me, feel like they're everything that I would love in a board game and want to love in a board game. And then nonetheless, when you sit down and play them, the opposite is true. It's just like
yeah.
there's just something where it just doesn't land for me. And I just not always can put my finger solidly on it. It just doesn't work. It just does not connect.
Right.
So we have a list of these because we have to, you know, I don't know. We just have to say these things out loud. It's
Yeah.
a little bit of a confession here. So amongst our shelves of games that are surrounding us, so hopefully they don't come to life like Toy Story and be upset about this.
That would suck.
Yeah.
Some of these are big.
So what do you have up first, Anthony? And I think yours might be a little similar to mine.
Yes, yes. We both chose the same game first. It's Gloomhaven.
Yeah, I
It
think
is Gloomhaven.
yeah, I think if this was list was listed as the top 10 ones, I think this would be number 1 for us.
Yes. Yeah, it's and you know what? When Gloomhaven first came out, I loved it. I'm not gonna like this is not I'm not gonna pretend I didn't. It was in my top 100 for a long time. It was relatively high the first time around. And when I got it, I played through the first like 15, 20 scenarios. I was like, this is great. I'm having fun. And it just started to grind. And I'm like, maybe I'm not having fun. But then I just kept telling myself, you got to get this back to the table. You got to play more of it. You've invested in it. You have an insert in there. This game is expensive. Everybody loves it. It's amazing. And a combination of not having the right group for it, or at least not a consistent group, and the solo scenarios just feeling like a grind, like a
Yeah.
literal grind to get through. An interesting puzzle playing like a game of it, but it's just so overwhelming when you look at it. Like there's 100 something games here to get through, and it sat on my shelf forever. It was in my top 100 until like last year, and even that was just like me thinking like I'm supposed to like this game, right? It's the number 3 of all time. For a long time, it was number 1. I'm supposed to like this game, and I've kind of in the last 6 months been like, you know what? I don't think I do, and that's fine. So it is in the hallway right now, waiting to go downstairs. It goes on the to sell list, that's fine because I got what I needed out of it, and I just don't have an interest in playing it anymore.
Yeah, so love dungeon crawls. Love dungeon crawls. And the idea of a dungeon crawl with a deck, having a deck building element to a dungeon crawl is, especially back then was unheard of. And it was like this is going to be a wonderful, amazing experience because there's Euro elements gameplay wise in here. There's this wonderful legacy mechanic. You can retire characters, bring new characters out. You build in the town. There's different paths, there's different victory, there's a whole bunch of different stuff. There's secrets, and you can open these boxes and they have different characters you've never seen. You don't want to spoil yourself, and there's no reason why this game shouldn't be like the greatest game of all time and we just retire. Like that should be the thing, right? Like we stop the podcast, the game is here, we're loving it, it's great, done. I had a consistent group that was dedicated to it. We played 30 plus games of this, and it was almost always a grind because and again, I have 30 plus missions. Forgive me if there was something radically different that changed after it, but you were doing the same thing. It was a hack and slash game. And there was no other elements to it of like, there's a puzzle or you have to do a thing. It was just hack and slash. And then on top of which, the setup was so laborious that you
Yeah,
never wanted to lose a mission because you would have to replay that. And that was the only thing that really pushed me into like trying to play optimally because I do not want to have to set up this mission again, and I don't want to have to grind through this again. And I I I don't know. Again, and then Frosthaven came out, and I was just like, I can't do it. I want to do
yeah,
it. Isaac Childress is an amazing genius. The people who are into this are cool people. All the stuff, the campaign they had one of, I think it might have been Game Found or Backer Kit or something, where you could literally get anything, everything for Gloomhaven, Frosthaven, all the other havens. It just never it nope.
yeah,
Like, uh, just not a thing. I don't know. I want it to be a thing. I would love for it to be a thing. It's not a thing.
yeah. Yep, same boat. It took me a lot longer to get there, but I'm with you now.
Yep.
So, all right, next one on my list is another game that was number 1 for a long time, and I have played this a couple of times, and I've tried to play it a couple more times, and it just has never really fully clicked with me. And there's a few reasons why I think, and that's Twilight Struggle from 2005. This is currently ranked number 13, so it's like way up there at the top of the list. And I'm like, just why is this not a game that interests me more? It's 2-player asymmetrical, one of my favorite types of games. I have a bunch of them. I love them. The designers, Ananda Gupta, Jason Matthews. Matthews designed 1960, Making of the President, which is one of my favorite games. Like same kind of thing, card driven, map based. Love that. Uh, it has expansions that kind of build out and add new and interesting elements to it. There's even an alternate version, like an Imperial, like walking through the Imperial age of Europe. And it's just something about the push and pull of this game combined with its length, because it is quite long, and the overt political nature of it. It just, you combine all those things and it's just not a good combination for me personally. Like, I'm somewhat put off by the theme. The length drags that out a little bit. And if you're teaching the game, it's a bear because it's long and you got to make sure the other person knows what they can and can't do. And if you're on the receiving end of the teach, then it's the reverse, right? Which was my first play and it was not great. So it's just one that keeps hovering and I keep trying to get back to it. And I just feel like I love this type of game. I like card driven games that are two players. It's one of my favorite types of games. Why do I not like the one that is considered the best, right? And I just don't. And I don't own this anymore. I got rid of it a while ago. I'm comfortable now with the fact that I own a couple of others that do this in a way that's more interesting to me. But yeah, Twilight Struggle, it's just not doing it.
I've never played this. I have played 1960 The Making of a President and love that. This is, again, like you said, one of those kind of grail experiences as far as the game's concerned. I've only seen it out in the wild once. I saw it at a game night, 2 people were playing it. I was like, oh, there it is. I've never seen it out there. It's been on sale. It's been available all along the way. Just never happened. Again, 2-player, heavy, complex, need a strong teach, gonna get crushed. Just like,
Right.
yeah, I never played it. All right, so next up for me is kind of a duo. It's Terra Mystica and Gaia Project. These are 2 games. Terra Mystica came out first, and then Gaia Project came out later, that I kind of enjoy, but I would never ask to play. And I've played both of these games surprisingly a lot for a game that I just would never ask to play because so many people in my group love Terra Mystica. Gaia Project a little bit less so, and maybe that's just because Gaia Project came out later and already Terra Mystica was kind of like ingrained in people's consciousness as far as gameplay is concerned. So Terra Mystica has the theme. I love the artwork. I love the fantasy theme. I love the terraforming that goes on. Such a smart kind of concept. The graphic design is fine. I like it. It makes sense more or less. The pieces are problematic for me personally, but I'm probably the only person on the planet who has a problem with the Catan pieces being in this game and the weird giant awkwardly shaped blocks that are supposed to be a thing. But there's just something about the magic system that goes along with this and how you kind of build out your sections for area of control and some of the elements where you need to be building near somebody in order to like reduce your costs and score points, but at the same time you want to have your own area and grow out. And it just, for whatever reason, and I know so many people love it. I remember hearing about that there are like really detailed analysis as far as when you play a certain faction, where you should build, how you should build out, what the orders are, like very chess like. Like the analysis and the gameplay just brilliant. And then Gaia Project came out and it was just better, right? Like the mechanics wise, like the tracks actually did a thing instead of just being tracks that you ran up. And I love space. Space is awesome. But again, I felt something devoid in the artwork and the presentation, and it still had some of the similar elements as far as the terraforming and the quasi magic system that went into it. It just fell flat. Both versions kind of fell flat. Terra Mystica was a little more, colorful and thematically appealing. Gaia Project was more mechanically brilliant, but both of them were like, I don't know. I don't know. I know that they have, obviously, you've mentioned it. I haven't played it yet. The new Terra Mystica Nova kind of things that have come out since, but these games, it just never did for me.
Yeah. I mean, I would definitely say play Age of Innovation at least once, but I
Yeah.
don't know if it's going to solve it because it's not different enough.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a distillation and refinement of Terra Mystica, but it's not like a new game. So
Sure.
we'll see. I'll make you play it.
Yeah. Sounds good.
All right. Next up for me is Wingspan. This one, it's been almost 5 years now, which is crazy since this
Heretic.
came out.
Heretic.
I
No.
know.
Why? Get him, birds. Get him.
um,
Get him.
so this is like the definition of a game I wished I liked more.
Hmm.
Like some of these are like games I liked, and I have to come to terms with the fact I don't like it. But this one is like everything about it says I should like this game. Right? It's tableau building, it's engine building, it's a fun, different theme. The artwork's beautiful. The design is interesting. The expansions add elements to the game, and yet, despite having played it like 15, 20 times because I had one of the first copies in Pittsburgh somehow, and just played it constantly for like 3 months. Everybody wanted to play. It just never quite got me. Like every time someone's like, "Oh, bring Wingspan, we'll play it." I'm like, "Okay." But honestly, there was one time at around like the second month or so where they're like, "Oh, look, bring Wingspan, we'll play it." And I brought it and I just gave it to them. I'm like, "Just make sure I get it back sometime." Like I don't want to play it right now.
Yeah.
Like I'm just done with this game. Um, and so why is it a game that just doesn't click with me? I've yet to kind of pinpoint this exactly. I think you voiced a few times, like, the kind of runaway combos in the game.
Yeah.
Those are bothersome.
That's
I'm not a fan of those.
true.
Uh, it is like a weirdly complex teach, despite the fact it's not a complex game.
Hmm.
For people who are not, because everybody wants to play the bird game. So, and some people just, it's a little too heavy for them.
Sure.
And it's always longer than it feels like it should be, especially like with the full 5 players. So, the box is like, it's an hour. And I'm like, it's never an hour. It's like 2.5 hours. And it doesn't feel like a game that should be that long.
Yeah.
And part of that is because people are like torturing themselves over those combos.
Yeah.
Um, there's just so many other tableau building type games where the theme is more engaging to me. And at the same time, the decision making space is not so broad that it can really like expand and build and take forever and also spiral out of control. So I don't think it's a bad game at all. I think it's a very well made game. It's very interesting. It does stuff that other games are still copying. But that combination of things has made it a game that, for whatever reason, I still own and have all the expansions to. And yet, if somebody asks to play it, I'll be like, I don't want to. I don't want to do it. So it falls squarely in that space of, man, I wish I liked this more because everybody's willing to play it with me even after 5 years.
Yeah. I I think you and I talked about this way back when, like, I knew this game was gonna be big, like,
Yeah.
before it even came out. It just it looked like it felt like it. Like, we are talking about PAX Premiere where it didn't. This one, like,
Hmm.
it did for me. Like, just looking at everything about the game looked like it was gonna be a phenomenon, and it was. And I don't own everything for it because at a certain point, it just, with my group at least, it kind of tired out. Although I played it online today a bit. I played it yesterday. I played a full game through. And I'm looking forward to play it because Oceania is coming out on Steam as far as the expansion is concerned. So
Hmm.
I come back to this every once in a while. I would like to own the rest of it just to play out and see how some of the other mechanics work. But I could see that, like, there are better tableau builders. And certainly, I think one little disappointments for me is like the goals should be more impactful, right? Because the goals kind of like, hey, each round, like at each round, this goal is important and this goal is important, but they're not as important as 4 or 5 other things that could happen in the game. So it's like, what am I really doing here? Nonetheless. All right, for me, next up is Sleeping Gods. Sleeping Gods from Red Raven Games. I played through the whole campaign. Actually, I played through the 2 campaigns of this, and I was really excited about it. There's a lot of hype for this game, and I like Red Raven Games. They kind of have, again, because you have your one designer artist here. They have a similar kind of aesthetic to it. They have a similar weight and gameplay to it, and this was going to be the one that was going to break out, and this was going to be like story and mechanics, like the best of all the things that Ray Raven had put together. And Ryan Lochte did a good job, but at no time did I feel like the story or the mechanics were compelling in any real way, nor was the ending of the game interesting or compelling, nor was any of, like, did I ever feel like we're going to lose or get knocked out of the game. So it was a lot of work for what was fairly a very simple, straightforward game. But because it had so many different elements to it and so many different endings to it, and because Ryan Lockett has just done a tremendous job with this game and so many other games, I want to kind of be enveloped in that world. And they've had expansions since. And a friend of mine was like, "Oh, we could pick up the expansion." I'm like, "No, I'm good." And they're like, "But it's amazing, the artwork, the characters." Nope. Just like, I want to. Like, I've invested a lot of time, money, and effort into it, and I don't. It's just not. It just doesn't work for me. And I wanted to, because again, it should be that legacy game that is heavy enough to keep you engaged, but light enough that you could get through it quickly. And just neither of those.
Yeah. Yep. Not one I've had a chance to play, but your review kept me away from it.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that happened. um, Next up for me is Orleans. This is a game I've owned twice now and gotten rid of twice now. So it just like I love the artwork as somebody who studied, you know, classical literature and read a lot of, romantic poems and stories in college. Like just having that like classic medieval French Saxony type of artwork, just amazing. I loved it. And the bag building element, it just seems like something I should do because I like deck building. I like curating a collection of things that kind of help me do things over the course of the game. But one thing I've discovered is I don't like bag building by itself, right? Like there are very few bag building games I've played and actually enjoyed. I don't know what it is about it. Like throwing a bunch of stuff in a bag and shaking it up and pulling stuff out. It doesn't do it for me. I don't know why.
Sure.
It's repetitious. You're constantly cycling things. You take so many actions in a game like this. So everything feels incremental. There's never like that big jump that you get in a game where everything's in front of you. Um, and so, despite the fact I love the look of it, despite the fact that some of these expansions are brilliant and interesting, and despite the fact that I like get a nice thrill out of like accomplishing like specific goals within the game, it's one that I'd actively have avoided. Like if it hits the table at game night, and like I said, I've owned it twice and I've gotten rid of it. And I've just kind of discovered over the course of the years that part of that is I just don't like this core mechanic. Like you just tell yourself like you like deck building, why don't you like bag building? It's like it's somehow different, and I don't know why, but it's just not something I'm interested in. So Orleans is not my cup of tea.
Yeah, this has always been in my top 100, top 150. I think it certainly does suffer from, at least the base game, not enough variety. I think I got to the point where it's almost like on rails. Like if you were a certain player, you knew what to do. The extra buildings that you could get as like little mini packs actually makes the game full. But,
Mm.
I could certainly see that. As a deck builder, you have a general idea of when something's coming out. As a bag builder, it's just like, you may never see that that piece. You keep plunging the bag for that. But, yeah, no, I love Orleans. But yeah, no, I could certainly see that. Next up for me is a game I know you love, Anthony, that I can't ever seem to get my head around, and just I don't I have played it more times than I really wanted to. That's Twa. Twa is a game all about working really hard and thinking very strategically about purchasing dice to kind of benefit you, and then have other people take them. Why
They
is
pay you for them.
why
They pay
I
you.
don't want to pay. I want to take the thing that's going to do a thing for me, and I worked really hard to get those dice, and then you take the dice, man. I just don't. And again, there's a couple of other games that I think the other one that I would kind of come close, although not completely close to this, is Keyflower. Because
Mm.
Keyflower, you build out your own little tableau of village areas that other people could then just jump in and take your spots. So it kind of fits along those lines, but Twa feels worse. And I kind of like Keyflower because it kind of makes a little more sense. But Twa is just like, all you have is the dice. You've worked really hard to get the dice, and people just take your dice. And I don't know why I'm playing this game. I have a really disdain towards this. So yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. Yeah, like the funny part too is I'm like, "Oh, Orleans, I don't like it." And you're like, "Oh, I love that game." And then you're like Twa, I don't like it. I'm like, oh, I love that game. They both have like a similar art style.
Yeah.
So it's almost like same theme, very different approaches, and we both flip flop on these.
Yeah, well,
Um,
if you stick your hand in my bag, yeah, I
yeah,
think I would hate that too.
but the thing is, you can buy other people's dice. So if everybody's buying all your dice and you can't do anything, it means you're not being very efficient with your money. So what are you gonna do?
I find that mechanic counterproductive or counterintuitive. Like what's the point then? Like what's the point? Like I'm buying stuff that might be attractive for you to buy. Like I'm getting those dice, working very hard to get dice so you could take them. Like,
Yeah,
well,
it's fun.
why am I even here? Like what I could just yeah, like I don't know.
Yeah, no, I 100% understand. It for whatever reason I find it to be a fascinating mechanic,
Mhm.
but at the same time, you don't see other games taking it, and probably for good reason. So I do not fault you on that one.
Sure.
Um, Next one up for me is a game that I thought I would love because it has all the things that I find interesting in games, right? You're throwing a bunch of dice, you're puzzling them together in a way that is thinky and interesting, and you're going on these quests and accomplishing various goals. So, in Too Many Bones, which is effectively an RPG, right? You're building out your dice, you have a huge pile of dice, and you're trying to like maximize the values and the things that your character can do. Components are amazing, artwork is great, and I found it to be deeply boring as a game. it's it's one of those games that, in my opinion anyways, they're saying like, look at all these amazing mechanics that are woven in with the story and the elements of the story, and then when you really get down to it, the mechanics are not actually that interesting, right? Because they take so long to accomplish.
Mm.
It just takes a long time to get the dice you need, build them up, put them in the locations, unlock the abilities, and then the story, at least in like the early versions of the game and the kind of early expansions, and I know they've kind of built on this in other iterations, but it's just not very interesting. Like I'm not it doesn't carry the game. So it's similar to how you describe like Sleeping Gods, where it's like, oh, it's supposed to do both and it does this in a very interesting way, and it's actually not that interesting and also doesn't do the mechanics very much. That's how I feel about Too Many Bones. And then it's also on top of all that very heavy and extremely expensive. So like um I had a friend back in Pittsburgh who brought this game several times. I played it several times because I'm like, I feel like I should like this game.
Mhm.
I like story in my games. I like RPGs. I like the theming here. I like the people who make it. Like they're cool people. And I could never get over just it just felt bland. I don't know. I was not engaged or interested by what the story it was trying to tell me.
I think I played this. I own it. I own a good chunk of it. And this is a lifestyle game. Period.
Yeah.
Like
Heck yeah.
if you are the type of person that's going to financially invest and time invest into this, you have to, because this is
Right.
not a game that you can put at the table. This is a Gloomhaven. And I think most people don't know that. You have to like the theme, you really have to love the artwork, you have to love the particular type of story elements like you were saying about Sleeping Gods. Like this has to be your thing. There's no
Mhm.
because that's all there is to the game, because it's everywhere and it's consistent throughout the expansions. It's not a bad thing, but it just is what it is. And as you mentioned, the gameplay elements like the actual, attack and skirmish and stuff like that are good, but again, they're as they're as straightforward and as flat as the theme and the story and everything else. Like again, it's not bad, but you have to really be into it because it's a lot of that. And it's
Mhm.
not, as you said, like you don't have those big turns, those big moves. It takes a while to upgrade your character, even though like you have like a ton of spots to do so. And there's so many characters in the game. It promises a lot. And you
Yeah.
just have to be that type of person. I don't It's just that's what it is, like period.
Yeah, and that's what everybody's told me too. It's like it comes through on its promises if you play it like 35 times. So
Yeah.
I'm like, not
A-
happening. And it kind of fell into that Gloomhaven bucket.
And you had
This is not one I ever owned,
yeah.
so it's not quite that bucket, but yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely yeah, it's your thing or it's not your thing, and I don't think there's any wiggle room on that. And again,
Right.
you can't just throw this on the table and go, "Let's play." Like it's not a thing. That's
Yeah, it's true.
not a thing that happens there. Uh well, uh, I guess this was going to come up eventually. Hansa Teutonica.
Yeah, I
So,
almost put this on mine too. Like,
so there's a lot of things you could say about us through the years, as far as like what type of gamer we were and stuff like that. And like when we were at the convention, someone like called us out and was like, "Hey, I have this whole kind of game, and this is the stuff." And I was like, I turned to Anthony, I turned to the guy, I'm like, "We're Euro gamers." Now, historically, when you said you were a Euro gamer, one of the first games or the definitive game, more or less, that came up was Hansa Teutonica. It has the, I don't know, quasi interesting, odd guy on the cover. Like it looks like a Euro game. It's green and beige like a Euro game. It's flat and 2-dimensional in gameplay wise as a Euro game. It's dry as all get out. There's no theme really in the game.
no,
This is the opposite of every Amerithrash, Ameritheme, like color, flavor, passion, dice, and like people love it. And like I've played this a lot of times and I wanted to love it. I own a copy of it that's still sealed, and it's been a while. So, I do want to. I even looked at the Kickstarter or whatever it had, the crowdfunding or whatever was at one point. It was on retail or something, like the big box version of this. And I'm like, yeah, this is going to be the moment that I'm going to love this. And I'm like, I play it, I win, actually win the game, and
yeah,
it brings me no joy.
yep.
So I want to. I really want to.
That's funny. Yeah, this was on my list, and then I paired it off just to get the numbers down.
Yeah,
For all those reasons, I have played this game like 5 times. I think when I checked my numbers,
sure.
I won 4 of them.
Yeah.
That's boring.
It,
It's not.
yeah.
It's not solvable, but like it's so dry that it basically becomes a spreadsheet in my head,
Yeah.
and it's just like, okay, I'll do this, and I'll do this, and I'll do this. It's I don't know. I've owned it twice. I got rid of it. I think I still got. I don't know if I got rid of it now, but it's. Yeah, I don't know. If someone brings it out, I would play it, but it's not something I want
You
to.
know what's funny
I'm going to
about
seek out.
you know what's funny about this game too? Like I sit down and I'm like, we're gonna play this, and I'm already disappointed, and I don't want to be disappointed, but now I'm disappointed and I'm a little resentful. And everyone starts playing it, and then if you know anything about the game, like you really do jockey for position in certain areas. So like everyone's fighting for like the real high power, high point areas. And then I'm like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this. I'm playing the game. All right, fine. I will go the opposite direction, the area nobody wants, and I end up doing my own thing. Also, not cool, not fun in the game. And then I end up winning, and I'm just like, I hate you. You really want me to like you. Like, stop it. Stop it.
Yeah, no, that's what happens.
Yep.
Oh man! All right, so my next game is a little bit different, very different actually. Clank, a deck building game. This is a game when it first came out, I was like, oh, deck building, but then also there's a board element to it, and it came out around the same time as a couple other games that did this, like Trains, I think, and then there was some D&D game that like Underdark. I can't remember the exact name, but it was like all of a sudden a thing. Like, okay, we're taking deck building, we're taking Dominion, and we're giving you a board, and then you have to manage multiple things. And I was like, oh, that's going to be so cool because I love deck building. It's a fun idea. And Clank does it in a way that should be satisfying, right? It's got the fantasy theme. It has a lot of fun puns on it. It's relatively simple, easy to teach. Has a cool mechanic where you're delving down and then you're making noise and it can wake up the dragon and then you got to get back out with whatever treasure you grabbed. And for whatever reason, and I think it's the length of the game, but for whatever reason, I just never felt quite satisfied with this game, right? I never felt like I had built up the deck and the engine that I wanted to build. I never quite felt like I got as far as I wanted to when I delved into the dungeon. And I've played with a couple of expansions. I think there was like an Egyptian one. I did play the space version, Clank in Space. And it just always kind of has that same feel of like, just as it's getting going, just as you start to feel that you've accomplished something, someone triggers the end of the game, right? Whether because they're not being careful or because that's just the timer on the game, right? It's not meant to be long. It's meant to take an hour. It's meant to be pretty tight and efficient. And I just don't think it should. I think it, and I don't want it to be long necessarily, but I feel like another 20 minutes or so, another little element to it. And part of the reason I know that it's not the deck building that bothers me is that Paul Denon, the designer of this game, made Dune Imperium, which is a brilliant game, and I love that game. With especially with the expansion materials in there, and that's just a longer experience that lets you build up and accomplish more things. Right? It lets you explore that world and do things in that space, and it feels like you're accomplishing something. And Clank, I just never quite feel like I'm accomplishing anything. And this is another game where I look at my game plays and I'm like, I win this game more often than I don't, and I just don't feel anything from that. I don't have any memories of this game where I'm like, that was a fun one. It's just like, oh yeah, that time that I was down there and the person went and they made a bunch of noise and then the thing happened. I had to get out of there. It's not satisfying. I get why people like it because it is short and easy and specific and direct and all within that theme that we all like. I just want something more out of it. So this falls into the category of this is not the game I wanted it to be, and therefore I'm disappointed in it. And I just wish I liked it more. I wish it was doing more.
Sure. I like this game, but when I played it, it felt like either it was too easy or it was too something along the lines. And I think somewhat of the takeaway there, like you mentioned, was when you play this game, it feels like everyone's being very dumb, which
Yeah.
I know is the concept of the game, right? Like we're all greedy adventurers trying to steal treasure from the sleeping dragon. That's an
Right.
incredibly dumb thing to do, right? Like so like you play the game you're like, "Oh, this is dumb." Space
Yep.
kind of cleans that up a little bit, but also like it weirdly doesn't make it better. Like I played the space version. I'm like, "Oh, cool. Now they make it a little more challenging and they added more things." Like that's definitely what I wanted. And then as when I finish the game, I'm like, I probably want to play Clank again. So when you play Clank, you're like, oh, the other players are diving deeper. That is dumb. Let me get out of here and make noise on the way out. And just like you said, I've won this more times than I've lost, and I'm like, okay, all right, yeah, okay. It was like I never feel
Yeah.
like I like the game, but I never feel like I won because I did something smart. I feel like I won because I either got lucky or other people were being dumb. Um, I don't know. I haven't played the legacy version, which hopefully might do more for that.
I've heard good things about that. That is actually something I'm interested in, and I've just yet to bite on it because I was so disappointed in the base versions. But like, it seems like the legacy element would add the stuff that I feel like is missing.
Yeah,
So
I agree.
someday I'll try it.
Next up for me is a game that I actually kind of somewhat like, but I wish I loved. And in fact, a recent game day about a month ago kind of remind me that there's something that just generally repulses me about the game. Uh it's code names. Code names.
Yeah.
Like one of the most popular games of all time, one of the biggest seller of all times, endless versions of code names. I own code names. I own code names pictures. I probably own another one or two versions of code names. So it's not like I'm against the code names, but like people are like, "Oh, let's play code names." I'm like, "No." I just like, do we have to? Like, can I be over there? And I literally like set up and taught and like learned a game while people were playing another game. I didn't have to do that. Codenames is fine. It's fine. I wish I loved it. I feel like generating the clues is more fun than sitting there waiting for the person to generate the clues and or picking the clues, because then it's just like you're either wrong and dumb or you're lucky and good. I don't know. I just the base game of code names and then maybe some other variations. Duet I really like a lot. I think that's the better version of it. But this game is so prolific. I wish I was on board for it. But there's just something just lackluster about it that I can't. I don't want to play the game.
Yeah, I hear that. I played this a bunch when it came out, and I feel like I burned myself out on it. So I can understand where you're coming from. So, next one up for me is Rising Sun. This game. So after Blood Rage came out, I was like, "This is brilliant. I love it. It's top 100. Will be forever. Great game." And then Eric Lang's like, "I'm going to do another one, but it's Japan and it's like diplomacy where you're working together." And I was like, that sounds amazing. So I backed that, gave them all the monies, and the game showed up. And having played it a few times, it just doesn't have the same feel as like Blood Rage in terms of like what I am accomplishing in that game. And part of the reason for that is that the game is designed around building partnerships and working with other players, which is fine. But A, you need the right group of people, which is variable. B, you need the right player count, which is annoying.
Hmm.
So there are multiple player counts in this game that just don't work very well because someone gets left out. Um, and C, like the game itself doesn't feel particularly well balanced. And that's not to say Blood Rage is well balanced, but Blood Rage, at least the imbalance is pretty clear. Um, this one, you've got some of these factions that can do things that it's difficult to respond to unless people are working together in the same cadence. And because you're changing your alliances throughout each round, it's difficult to know if everybody's kind of on board with you of what you're trying to accomplish. Um, it just it takes too long, and the confrontation elements feel a little forced as a result. Whereas Blood Rage is quick and efficient, right? And Ankh kind of gets back to that, where it's quick and efficient, and yeah, it forces those confrontations, but they work because of how tightly managed the game is. This one just feels kind of loose around a lot of edges. I love the themes. I've held on to this one for a long time. I just don't actually enjoy when I'm playing it, and I really want to because it feels like of the three themes, this is the one I should enjoy the most based on my own personal things that I like in the world. And it's not. It's my least favorite of the trilogy, um, and that disappoints me. So I wish I liked it more.
I like this game a lot. I own it. I've played it a bunch. I love the additional monsters and how some of the modules kind of open the game up. But inevitably, it is a group project. And if you ever worked in a group project at work or at school, it certainly runs into that situation. And I've played games where people continued to want to partner together. And by doing so, they literally gave victory to some other player at the table. And
Yep.
I think fundamentally that becomes the major problem of this game.
It is king building the game, and it wears that like a badge of honor. It's like that's what the game is. You're like, I don't like that in games.
And you could play a card, you could betray your partner.
Yeah.
And that's interesting as far as the dynamic and thematically kind of true. But again, if you and your partner are doing it like you have to manage everyone at the table because you're all scoring points on some level regardless. Like it becomes a thing. And you have to switch up and you have to it's just it requires I hate to say this because I hate when people say this. It requires a certain group.
Yeah.
And I don't think that I don't like that about board games. I think if someone's reviewing a board game and they said if you have the right group, I think that's a problem with the board game, not a problem with the group. Because they're playing the game, like they are the right group. They are your group. Like you shouldn't need to like draft like intellectual strategists around the world to be able to enjoy a game. Like that's
Right.
just not a thing.
Right.
Still love it, still enjoy it, want to get it back to the table, but yeah, no, I get it. For me, again, a game that is somewhat similar to that as far as the team at the table is the classic, and the classic has hurt me from not wanting to play the legacies. Of course, it's Pandemic.
Mm.
Uh, the original wonderful classic game of all time, which I've played and I generally kind of like, but it is a, you know, it someone takes the lead and they run with it. And that kind of crushes the game. And also, what crushes the game is just sometimes you don't win because cards. And also because, like, it's a formula and you have to figure it out. So, like, in your head, if you're like, I think the way that this formula plays out best is if we do this, that, and the other, and like someone else is like, no, but I think it's this way. That's the gameplay. The gameplay is not the game. The gameplay is, can I convince someone else or other people at the table that my calculations here are better than someone else's calculations? Because what's the win loss condition? I've now pissed other people off at the table, or we win the game. Like, I don't like the alpha player issue, so that doesn't work for me. And I don't like to play games that have a formula that like is a win or loss thing where you just can't. Like, and it's terrible because I love this mechanic in Defenders of the Realm and other games, and I've heard the most amazing things about Pandemic Legacies. So I want to play those, but if you're telling me I have to play Pandemic multiple times, I can't. I nah, 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 nah.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't think I don't want to play base Pandemic because it's more of a game system than a game at this point.
Yeah,
But the things that have been done with that system, there's some really, really interesting,
yeah, of
engaging
course.
formulas that really work well. So it's kind of a tough thing where like everything you're saying, I'm like, yeah, I kind of agree on all that. But if you play this version, that's not a thing. And if you play this version, that's not a thing. And um, there's so many versions of this game. Like, I'm not saying that if you don't like Pandemic, you'll find a version you do like, but you might.
Yeah,
So it's tough.
I know.
All right. Next one up for me is Final Girl, which is the reimplementation of Hostage Negotiator. Hostage Negotiator is a game that I really enjoyed. As a solo only dice management mitigation game, in which you're trying to save hostages as a negotiator, naturally. And so Final Girl reimplements that where you are playing the final girl in a horror movie. And so each version of this game is a different type of horror movie. There are now like I think 25 or 30 of these. Three full seasons and multiple versions in each season. And I really thought I would like. I'm not a huge horror movie fan, but I really do like the system that AJ Porfirio and Evan Derrick created, and I really wanted to like this because everything I've heard, everything I've read, everything people have told me is just like this is it. This is the distillation of that experience, and it's so thematic, and each version is so unique and different, and I just couldn't get into it. And I think honestly, I think it's pure theme, and that's on me. Like, but at the same time, it is a brutal system, right? Hostage Negotiator was the same way. Like, if you do not learn how to mitigate those dice rolls, if you don't think about it and manage which cards you recruit and how you recruit them and when you do so, you're just at the mercy of the dice, and you're probably going to lose. So it does feel brutal in that way, combined with like just the way the theme is overwhelming, anyways. You're just going to lose a bunch, which you want a good solo game to be challenging, but this doesn't feel like I'm building anything. So this is just one of those things like I like solo games. I liked Hostage Negotiator. I feel like I should like this, and I just don't for a combination of reasons. Um, I've given up on it. I passed on the copy to someone who does like it, but it's something I wish I did.
Yeah, this was a game that I remember seeing out there on crowdfunding, and I was like, I want to buy this, and I want to buy all of this.
Yeah.
Like, just not like some of it. I want all of it. I love the theme. I'm not a big horror movie fan, but I appreciate the trope and strong female leads. Awesome. And the idea of like these different monster movies, different characters, great. And I'm a hard sell for solo games. So if there was something that would be great, it could be this. And yeah, no, it's just I get that. I certainly get that. I haven't played it, so I can't speak to it, but I get that for sure. All right. Well, for me here, this is kind of a little bit of a combination. This is Hive and Yinish. These
Mm.
are the abstract games that are so abstract that they are like, I don't know, like like Yinish has a whole multiple collection of games with just different names that I can't even remember because it's all abstract of the same thing of just moving geometric shapes on a board. Hive is a little more thematic, and I really wish I loved Hive a lot more because it's such a fun, beautiful game with these different insects that have different powers and the idea of capturing the other player but also being defensive at the same time is such an interesting concept, like being offensive and defensive. Should I be offensive? Offensive? Oh, I was too offensive and they got me. Be too defensive and now I blocked myself in and I can't move anywhere. So, and again, it has a lot of expansions. It has a travel version of it that's very easy to take with you. So this could be the game that I take everywhere with me. It's a great two-player game. Nice, hard, chunky pieces. And again, it's one of the classic games out there. Uh, it just might be the abstract appeal that just never does it for me. If it's just too abstract for me. I guess that's what it comes to. So Hive, I really want to like a lot more. Yinish and its brethren, I don't know. They all seem the same and they're not the same. And I don't mean that I don't want to be derogatory to any way to the designer here of the many games of these abstract natures. It just does not do it for me.
Yeah, I haven't played either of these, but I totally get it. Like, there are some abstract games that just don't work.
Yeah.
All right, my last one is Dune. And so I did not play the original 1979 Dune. But this is the 2019 version. But that's a re-implementation of the original, so close enough, right? Um, this is a game that I had always wanted to play, and I didn't know anybody who owned it. And then Gale Force 9 finally reprinted it, which nobody thought they ever would. And I love the IP. Read the book several times. Love the movies. Dune Imperium's amazing. Like, it's a theme and an IP that I really enjoy. So I was like, I'm really excited to play this game. It turns out, after 40 plus years, game hasn't aged super well. Like, you go on Board Game Geek, it has a lot of high ratings, and a lot of people are like, "This is amazing and it's great and it's a brilliant game." And honestly, I just don't think it holds up in a lot of ways. Right? Our very first play of the game, somebody won in like 20 minutes because there's an option to do that based
Yeah.
on certain stars aligning. You need 6 people to play this game legit, and it is a 3+ hour commitment. So we were like settled in for the long haul post teach, and then we were done in 20 minutes. And it was like, okay, do we want to reset and try again? And we were like, no. Like, because it was just so deflating for that to happen. And like, that doesn't happen in modern games. They're designed for that not to happen. And so it's old, right? It's dated. Um, there's definitely some imbalances here. It's so asymmetrical. Like, it's just certain things don't work the way you want it to. You need the right amount of players, you need the right amount of time, you need certain things not to happen within the game, and you need everybody to kind of manage each other and to pay attention to what everybody else is doing. The game does not do any of that for you. So effectively it's just unforgiving. And I understand, I'm sure a lot of people are listening and be like, yeah, that's the fun, right? It's an unforgiving game. It doesn't care how you play. You just need to do the things you need to do, which I get. But if I'm going to play a 6-player game that takes that many hours to play, I want one that kind of provides at least a baseline of guardrails. So an Eclipse or a Twilight Imperium or something that just has some systems in place that keep it from like spiraling out of control. Dune doesn't do any of that, the original. So it was deeply disappointing. I really want to like it, and having gone back and played it again and actually getting through a full game, I was like, that's fine. Like, it wasn't terrible, but there's just other things I'd rather play with that time at that length.
No, I agree completely on that. And it's a shame, and because it was always a Grail game. I always loved Dune, and you couldn't find the game, you couldn't buy the game. The game was reproduced without any changes, any updates, and things like that. Which, again, for what little we had heard about Dune, we did hear about like the long gameplays and the oddities to it. But again, that's Dune. That's not doesn't seem to be too far out from the mainstream. So yeah, no, I get it. I don't know why they didn't put a little effort into just kind of making things work a little bit better in the modern day now that we know more about, game design. Finally for me, this came up recently. Somebody was talking about this game and I was just like, don't say anything negative. Don't say anything negative.
Yeah.
Just don't be that guy. Don't be that guy. Don't be that guy. Hanabi.
Yep. There it is. I knew this would be on your list. I knew it was coming.
Look, I played Hanabi multiple times. I think I have a copy of Hanabi somewhere buried because it's a small box game. Played it at multiple game nights, played it with different types of people. People still play it. I think we have a friend of ours who loves the game, plays it like excessively. People you can play on Board Game Arena, and it's just the smallest box of I don't know. Can I say BS? Can I say
Yeah.
that? The
Yeah, you're good.
smallest box of BS I have ever seen from gamers. Because gamers will come up to you and they're like, I am a Hanabi master, like blah 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 blah. And then you sit down and play with them and they telegraph their moves and what they have in their hand so hard and so often. This happens with so many people that I'm like, dear God, why are we playing this? Like, this is like a game of delusion. Like, I look, we all need a win in life. I get that. I need several. Like, I just need some wins, okay? But like, I just don't get it. Like, the concept of flipping the cards so that you don't see them and everyone else does, genius. Why didn't anyone think of this sooner? Like, genius. And I love fireworks, so why not? And then And then everyone I talk to about this game and everyone who plays this game, it's the same like heroic stories. And then every time I play with them, it's like, I don't know. Like I assume they're doing it on purpose. Maybe there's some unconscious kind of giveaways here, but like it's not, we're not playing poker, friends. This is silly.
Yeah.
It's just silly. Everyone cheats. Everyone cheats unintentionally, purposely. I don't know. Unconsciously. I don't know. I just I don't know. Every time we have a conversation with some people out there, I'm just like, oh god. And I want to like the game because again, brilliant mechanics, brilliant idea, just all kinds of great. And yet I just can't. I just can't have a conversation about Hanabi.
Yeah, I don't think I've played this game in like almost 10 years. My first few plays were exactly that, and I'm like, someone's like, "We did amazing." I'm like, "You and you and you cheated. I might have cheated. I probably cheated. I don't know." Like, it's just one of those things. Like, you finish it, and you're like, "I don't feel great about what we did there." um, so I get why people love it. I don't love it. I own it because it's good in my classroom,
Yeah.
and I don't use it like as a straight game either. Like, I'm like, "You're gonna play this game. Here's how it works." And then they play it, and then afterwards, I'm like, "Do you think you cheated?" Like,
The
and that's
mecha-
the fun part. That's the conversation that they end up having and they discuss, and that's where we get cool things. But I don't know. I don't want to play it myself.
Look, brilliant mechanics. I want to love it. I want to be on board. I want wins, man. I just want to be able to drop some Hanabi. Like the last time someone had a conversation, I'm like, do you know that they have a large box version with these really nice tiles? I'm like, that's the only thing I could say about it. So yeah, Hanabi. Uh yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing. All right, everybody. That's everything for this week. Until next time, this is Chris.
And this is Anthony.
And we'll save you all. See you at the table. Take care, everyone.